LM. We're live. Another fluent stream. Hey everyone.
Fluent guys.
As hey man, hey, and hello, uh, people rolling in. I'm gonna kick it off with just kind of set the stage as people are coming. Um, and I'm Dino, one of the co-founders of Fluent, and I am here with my man Paco from the Celestine Sloths. Actually, we have never spoken before. We've chatted on Telegram, but this is actually like our first. We're doing a live BD meeting here, or something like because we're going to talk about your guy. We're going to talk about Lazy Chain. We're going to talk about the Sloth community. We're going to talk about like how you guys think about execution environments and modular. And yeah, this is just embodiment building in the open. Let's do it. Great to have you, Paco.
Yeah, honestly, like super excited to meet you. Yeah, like it's funny because I feel like we've spoken like a lot on like Telegram, but we had never actually like spoken on like a call before. And yeah, as you said, like very excited for this like sort of like more like open like BD meeting. And yeah, like looking forward to cooking in public. I think that's one of the best things that crypto has. I don't know if you agree, but it's like if you look at like AI projects, like it's much more like close. But if you look at crypto, like pretty much everyone is like building with the community, which I think is really cool. And it's something that I feel like at Slots, it's sort of like part of our DNA. So very, very excited to be here with you. And nice VFP, man. I think we all really
Yeah,
like it
man.
from the community.
I gotta say, like, thank you guys for creating this. I was freaking honored, man. I have admired the community for a bit, and this is just an absolute honor. So before we jump in, I actually just want to call out our lazy meme contest that we're doing on actually on Fluent DevNet. We're using Joke Race. I'm going to post this in the public group right or the public comments right now, and you can also see a link to this. If you like, there should be a link below the this stream, and that'll direct you to our Discord with some instructions if you've never used Joke Race before. But yeah, get in there and vote on the best kind of blended sloth memes, and we'll announce the winners at the end of the show. Um, all right, let's see, I think enough people are in here. So, man, tell me, just pretend I know nothing about sloths for a quick sec to kick this off. Like, what are the Celestine sloths? Where does this idea come from? And like, what makes this community so strong currently? And I just those are kind of a few questions. I think a lot of people are aware of you guys by this point. Like, I mean, yes, definitely a lot of people are aware of you guys. But and everyone, even if they don't know, what the Celestine sloths are, like they see you guys very active and know it's a very strong community. So yeah, where did this all come from? What binds it together?
Yeah, so that's actually like a great question. So I would say like by now, like the slots are sort of like the face of like the modular community, which I'm not sure like was the initial goal, but I feel like that's sort of like what we've become. So the slots, like the origin, sort of to like tell you like the whole story. Like so Saki got this idea from like Lazy Celestia, or like, well, originally like Lazy Ledger. He told me like, well, I basically wanted their token to be called Lazy. So in the end, like they rebranded. So of course, like it wasn't really possible. But like he always had this idea to like launch like slots, like for Celestia, because like it sort of made a lot of like cultural sense. Apparently, like a lot of people were kind of bearish on what he was trying to do, but I think he executed like really well. He got like a very good artist like SK. Big shout out to him. Like he's been like awesome. Actually, like he's the one that did your PFP. So like big shout out to him. And basically, like he just like cooked the collection with SK, and like they launched it without basically like telling anyone. I think not even like insiders like knew like when was the mint going to happen. Basically because like according to Saki, like what he wanted to do was basically make people like feel lucky if they minted a slot, which I think is pretty funny because like everyone I speak to tells me like, well, I wished I got more slots like when they came, when they went live. So I think that's like pretty cool because like I feel like it gives the collection like a lot of like cultural relevance. For me personally, I didn't even get to mint it either. I remember I came to my house like not super late, but like at 11 p.m. and I was like super tired. I was about to go to sleep. I guess it makes sense because of slots. But I remember I checked Twitter and I saw Nick White and Andy from the roll of like Rocket Slots, and I was like, oh, what is this? I'll mint one. I'll mint some, and that's basically how I got into the collection. And then like I feel like what makes us like a really like tight knit community is that literally like man we are pretty much a community. Like at first it was only like Saki like running the collection basically, but literally like one day I was like, oh, I was like an anonymous guy on Twitter and like I DM'd him and I was like, hey, do you need help with like like the account and like yeah like handling the community? And he was like, sure, I can give you access to the account. And like so I started posting and that's basically how I got like more involved. I feel like it was like all like very organic, and in general now it's really cool to see like I feel like we have like a bunch of like sloth content creators, and it's like amazing because they basically like spawned out of nowhere. It's literally just like like doing stuff on the account and like sort of like setting the example for the community, and like a lot of people have followed have followed up and be like, oh, how can we actually like help grow this? And now we even have like a sort of like small team of people like doing like stuff to help us, which is like amazing, either like content or like even on the dev side for like lazy chain. And it's like it's really really like amazing to see because it's all like pretty much been like a community effort so far. And yeah, like I feel like that's what makes us like really strong, like that the fact that we're actually like a community and we have many people that have skin in the game and are pushing for the project to succeed, but pretty much in an organic way. So yeah, I think that's like a sort of like intro to slots, but I don't know if maybe I missed any of your questions though.
No, no, that was good. I actually didn't even know Zaki started the project. That's funny, and he slid into his DMs. I mean, he happens to be like he's super, super helpful and like such a responsive guy. Like I feel like he's always helping out every project in the modular and Cosmos space. So that's pretty cool. Oh, what was your background? Like, were you building any projects before this? You said you were an anon on Twitter.
So yeah, so I used to be a data scientist at Google, but it was really not my thing. So my background is mostly in like crypto infrastructure. So, but yeah, like I just like on Twitter, yeah, I'm pretty much like just an anon, but been working in crypto like full time, I think now for about 2 years. So yeah, that's kind of like my background.
So so beyond. Let me see if I get this right. So like you've been an anon on Twitter, but you've also worked in crypto infrastructure. Is that detached from this account? Like was Paco like a new account, or is that attached to your previous work?
It's pretty much like a new account. Yeah, before I wasn't really
Uh,
tweeting. So yeah, unfortunately, uh, the company that I was working for back then, like we ran out of funds. So I was like, oh, I'll have some fun, like like tweeting. And yeah, like honestly, like tweeting has been like great for me. Like I got connected to a lot of like really good people. Like also like Nick from Celestia. Like I remember, like he just slid into my DMs and he was like, "Hey, I like your tweets. You wanna talk?" And I was like, "Sure." So yeah, like it's been really fun to like also like uh like start posting more on Twitter. I feel like it's kind of like a process, and now I've been like a little bit not as active as before, which probably is bad. Like I think I need to get more active again. But yeah, it's been super like yeah, it's sort of like a I would say completely separate account. Yeah, from what I was
Makes
doing before,
sense.
for
Makes
sure.
sense. Yeah. Nick's another one, probably like the absolute best at just curating talent across the modular space. I mean, I
Yeah,
think even when I was
modular
writing,
GCR, right?
what's that?
Modular GCR.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I remember he slid into my DMs at some point, like when I was starting to write about like modular infrastructure, and the dude just has crazy eye for talent, and also super helpful and awesome guy. Um,
So actually, like, so just like a quick parenthesis, I know,
yeah,
but it's like, what's your background though? How do you get into like modular? I feel like I've read about it, but I'm sure the Sloth community would love to know.
yeah, totally. So pre-crypto, like a few years back, like before a few years ago, I was doing cloud infrastructure, and always worked in startups. So I was doing some stuff in like ML tooling. I worked on some ML tools, did some intent-based networking, like intense, non-crypto intense.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
has some like edge computing stuff, and some like intelligent placement software for like Kubernetes clusters, like a bunch of like infrastructure things in the cloud mostly, and then started to get into crypto. Honestly, man, like I've kind of backfilled the DeFi degen part, but that was just never where it came from. Like I was just an infrastructure guy, and like I was paying a really close attention. I always nerded out on internet history and studied some of like the patterns happening in cloud infrastructure, right? Like just all the container wars and Kubernetes winning out, and like, oh, why did Kubernetes win out and all that kind of stuff. So I always nerded out on that. And then I saw Ethereum, and I started getting more into kind of like crypto, and like, oh wow, this is like a better way to build infrastructure, and it has these certain properties, and this is really cool. And so as I got deeper into Ethereum, I very quickly fell down the roll up rabbit hole, and then very quickly fell right into the modular rabbit hole. And I'm like, oh wow, this all makes a lot of sense. This resembles the microservice architecture that like I know scaled the cloud really, really well. So it just made sense to me.
No, makes sense. I can't say I haven't lived my part of like a crypto region, but it's nice to see people coming from like a very different backgrounds because that's honestly like I feel like that what makes the industry like so great because I guess you are more focused on like yeah, like those like more like web 2 like aspects like Kubernetes. I think that's pretty interesting of like and I also feel like it has pretty strong parallels to like web 3. So yeah, that's really cool though.
It's a double-edged sword, man. Like I had to learn, and I actually learned to love more of the degen side of things. It's funny because like I kind of came in vibing with the censorship resistant and like permissionless nature of like Ethereum, but like I was never really into I've never like been a big finance like guy. I know that sounds weird. It's not like I hate money, but like never really been like a big like finance guy. And so like at first I was even like kind of averse to it. Definitely wasn't like Bitcoin maxi territory or like anti-token. Like I thought it was a good kind of incentive mechanism, and programmable incentives you could just distribute very like widely and all that. Like it made sense to me. But um I learned to love it. Like you kind of like learn to see the humor in it all, and you're like, oh, this is fun. We're all G-gens in some way, and you just kind of like lean in. And so, um, and it's important to understand like the crypto culture as well. And I feel like that's a good like diving into all like the degeneracy of it and everything is like really important step to having like a full view of this crypto thing.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like so. I feel like we're definitely all regions because like crypto
Exactly.
is like the only industry where like also like you tell someone that is not into crypto and they're all like, oh, how did you get into that? That's it's very funny. It's very funny because I feel like if you said something like, oh, I work in banking, they'll be like, oh, okay. But since you we work in crypto, they're always like, oh, how did you get into that? It's just a funny question. But yeah, no, I definitely resonate with that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'd go beyond like we're all degens in crypto. You start to learn like along the crypto journey, just like more of how society works, and you're like, oh, everyone's a degen in some way. Like, oh wow, all my friends who gamble are no different. They're just using different tools, and all the people who are like speculating on like all things across our lives are no different. They're just looking at different assets, and you're like, oh, we're all degens. This is kind of funny. Um, but let's get in a lazy chain. You mentioned that before. Tell me a little bit about that. Like, I get the community, but why are you guys building a chain? What's kind of the problem to solve there? And Yeah, just tell me a little bit about that thinking.
So yeah, no, for sure. So I think Lazy Chain is both an extension of like the Sloth and Celestia communities. Uh, I think right now, like both of our communities, like we want to like basically like improve our go to market. Like if you think of like Celestia, it's also like a very like academic ecosystem. It's like, and it's like very infrastructure focused. But we want to become like that sort of like, well, like activity chain that, you know, like when you think of Celestia, you kind of like think of Lazy Chain as well. And you're like, okay, I basically like we want to like be that place for, like, for example, if you're like a crypto degen and like you're doing stuff on like many ecosystems, or like that more sort of like approachable place in like modular to which you can think about, go and like actually like do stuff, do fun stuff that you would actually like. And I would say, yeah, the idea for Lazy Chain is to have like a brand that attracts, I would say, most crypto market participants. And, you know, like as you say, like those people that, you know, might be like labeled as gamblers, but in the end, like, yeah, we're pretty much just doing the same thing, just in like different ways. And yeah, like we basically like want to like also be really adamant about, like, for example, encouraging projects to like do, like, for example, new experiments on Lazy Chain. And especially like since we have like, I would say, like a pretty strong community, I would say we've built our product in like a different way, because we basically build the community first. So something we want to help with is sort of like help projects like, I don't know, like Fluent or like any other like modular projects like that's actually like bootstrap their go to market by basically like, well, leveraging our really really like strong community. And again, like I think another like really important point on why we're doing this is that uh, basically, if you have an NFT, I would say your distribution tends to be very bad, especially with slots. We only have 2,500 of them, so they are quite scarce. And it's sometimes, you know, it gets hard to like tell people to be like, oh, you have to pay more than 3K to like be part of this community. It just feels like too much when like
Right.
clearly we could onboard like way, way more people. And I think we're basically building like Lazy Chain to like, again, like 10x our distribution, and give people like skin in the game without them basically having to like, yeah, like give them like a more accessible touch point to like have a skin in the game on slots, on Celestia, and on like the ecosystem in general. So yeah, that's basically how like did I answer your question?
Yeah, no, you did. I have a couple follow-ups. Like, do you, and sorry if I missed this, is it a general, is it intended to be a general purpose chain? I know you said you'd love people to run experiments on it.
So I would say it's definitely not going to be like a general purpose like a chain, not at all. But the way we see this is that, look, since we're basically like a community-run project, we can actually do stuff that most people like. I mean, like I feel like if you're venture backed as a team, like you have like certain expectations. I feel like with our project like being community run, like we can have a little bit more leeway, for example, to like experiment on like token designs, also like, for example, like running our own sequencer and like also like accruing back like all the like revenues of the sequencer to the community, like
Oh, I see.
implementing like a decentralized sequencer. So it's like I feel like we have a lot of leeway to like experiment with like modular architecture itself, and like how to like build a chain. And I think this could like be really fun. So because we don't really have like a stakeholder, like, you know, like telling us what to do, but we're more of a like community being like, oh, let's try this new thing, like let's try this like new VM, for example. So that's kind of like how I'm viewing it. But definitely I would say our focus is not being like a more of a general purpose chain, but more of a, you know, like experimentation playground for like modular projects, and sort of for them to like, you know, like try their products, get them, make sure that they're used, because again, we have a big community, and I feel like we want to like keep growing like our community and like make sure they're used. Because I feel like one problem with infrastructure projects nowadays is that it's very hard to get users. It's very hard to like, build community, and we actually want to help in that regard. So yeah, did I answer your question now? By the way.
Got it. Got it. Yes, yeah, yeah, that clarified it. You're saying you guys have room to experiment with the chain. That makes perfect sense. That's cool. That's exciting. Is the first thing you're going to launch the NFT collection, or are you going to launch that somewhere else?
So I would say, well, the NFT collection is already live though.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
oh, you
But
mean the honoraries?
yeah, exactly.
So on the honoraries, we're still figuring out like where to launch them. So maybe they're going to be on Lazy Chain, but I'd say like I'm not sure yet. So like we're still like pretty much like deciding, but yeah, like that's probably not going to be the first thing we launch. We actually have a bunch of like uh BC back teams like actually like building stuff for Lazy Chain, which also I think is it's pretty cool. So we're probably gonna launch our testnet first, and yeah, our devnet is already live now. But yeah, we're probably I want to say we're gonna launch our testnet hopefully by fall, by sometime in the fall. So yeah, stay tuned for that. But yeah, it's probably the first thing we launch is probably not going to be an NFT collection.
Gotcha. Okay. Um, Very cool. The teams are building on lazy DevNet. Oh, I understand you guys use CosmWasm right now, right? So like, what made you opt for basically WebAssembly as your execution environment instead of the EVM, and what does that allow you to do?
Yeah, no, great question. Honestly, like long term, I would say we're not really set on a specific VM, but just to give you some background, uh, Lazy Chain, like it pretty much started as like a hackathon project when Yermund, who is actually like one of the main developers, uh, yeah, he basically created like Lazy Chain for a Celestia hackathon, the Infinite Bazaar one. I think it was like around like 2 3 months ago, and well, the whole idea sort of like took form, and like a bunch of teams supported it, and we basically decided to like turn this into an actual chain, like a sort of like like a cultural extension for slots, and like again like an activity hub for like the modular eco. And well, Yermund, like he's pretty big on cosmosm. He also works at the ICF. So basically like I think what the WASM framework, like basically what in my opinion, like enables to do, we're also like using Rollkit. And I feel like it allows us to like deploy right now, like maybe like slightly faster, uh, especially like our to like like spin up our own chain. And also like I think some like an idea that we wanted to play with a lot was sort of like pushing the limits of like composability forward by like using new also like Guillermo, like he basically developed like interchain attestation, which is pretty cool because it enables like IVC for like any chain where you can't or don't really have a light client that you can trust or use, which I think is pretty cool. So we wanted to try to like like push the boundaries on that. But yeah, I would say that was sort of like one of the main motivations to build with Wasm.
Gotcha. No, that makes a lot of sense. Um, are there other if you let's just like walk further down the execution design space. I know we were chatting a little bit offline about how you were thinking about things and what problems you were running into, and let's just let's just explore that publicly, man. I want to just like pick up where we left off, I guess. And you're talking about different like wallet compatibility, like you mentioned, Solana coming into the fold. Maybe just talk to that.
Yeah, no, I would say it's pretty interesting because I feel like by default, like one of the big downsides of building with Wasm is pretty much that well, you like your wallet composability like is pretty, I would say, limited, at least by default. At least the default like it's pretty limited, especially like I think it's hard if you want to like onboard like users from like other ecosystems like ETH or Solana, like I feel like they tend to be used, like they're pretty used to like using like their own wallets, and I feel like that's like asking them to change is sort of like adding like, like a lot of like extra friction into like the, like, well, the whole process of onboarding people into your chain. And honestly, like I feel like having friction, like I feel like onboarding is one of the main pain points in crypto, because like, look,
Hmm.
attention, like it's really hard to like it's really hard to, well, retain attention and like remain relevant nowadays. And I feel like if you introduce friction into your onboarding process, namely like, well, a user doesn't have this wallet, uh, it tends to be like pretty. I feel like that's one of the downsides, and that's also like why I texted you on Telegram at that time. I just wanted to know more about Fluent, and like, for example, like how exactly like does it work for like, well, like, like blended VMs, and like can you actually like, if you're like us, like building like our own chain, can you like, for example, like use Fluent to like, again, like, well, sort of like help with that main issue, which is like, well, uh sorry, I got a little bit lost, but basically like, well, help with the issue of onboarding and the fact that users might not have like, I don't know, like if you're a user of if you use Phantom Wallet mostly, like you would probably like to like keep using that in our chain. So yeah, that's basically like something that we're also thinking about, because making it pretty smooth to onboard users, I would say, is definitely within our top priorities. We do have like a bunch of solutions for this, namely like now we're probably going to integrate like Skip API and also SpiceNet, to make sure that we're interoperable with Solana. And we're also talking with the guys from Abstract. Big shout out to them. They're building like remote accounts, which means that you're sort of gonna be able to like interact on lazy chain from, for example, like a MetaMask, which I think is pretty cool. So yeah, that's sort of like a TLDR. I think I spoke a lot. Sorry, and sorry if I
No,
got
no,
lost.
no.
But
No, man, that's super, super helpful. That, I mean, that gives me a clear picture, especially of the goal. Like, I mean, you guys are clearly trying to make it easy for users to adopt apps on Lazy Chain, and yeah, there's friction. What we talked about specifically, I think on Telegram, or was wallet friction, people downloading new wallets. I mean, like that's definitely an area that ties into what we're doing with funded execution. One thing I want to clarify is between like the I guess distinguish between Fluent, the L2 that we're building right now, and the Fluent based framework that we kind of have working in the background and will be ready. It's still in development, I'll say, but that will be a little bit more like a roll kit for people to spin up their own execution environments and make their own trade offs. Because it's interesting just hearing you like talk through that, because what we're doing for the L2, because everything comes with trade offs, right? And so what we're doing for the L2 is um, trying to make everything one state machine, and like SVM, EVM, and WASM specifically in one state machine. And that has like a lot of really cool benefits for like I think applications and some cohort of users, right? Like the contracts from all these environments can all call each other directly. And but at the same time, you do have to make some sacrifices. So I think in our specific L2, we're still researching this and trying to make it work, but most likely it'll be compatible with EVM wallets or EVM addresses, but potentially not SVM addresses. This won't really matter for the typical like user experience, but it might mean that like SVM wallets don't necessarily work with the L2. I mean, obviously, if something like Phantom that supports like EVM and SVM um, addresses, then you obviously wouldn't have to switch wallets, but you might have to switch networks. So like there's some stuff like that we're thinking through this design space and like clearly making the trade-off that I just mentioned for the L2, because our our highest priority design goal is, a state like one state machine where all the contracts can actually talk to each other. But to tie into what you said, um, as we develop this Fluent based framework, we can construct it in a way that's way more flexible for other people to make potentially different trade-offs. We're designing the system so you can add new um, a simulation for new VMs, potentially optimize for different types of wallet support. It might trade off a little bit of some of the other properties, but you can definitely have like a pretty cool environment that supports SVM apps, EVM apps, and maybe does optimize even further for both of those different addresses being supported or different wallets being supported. Maybe, and so it's helpful hearing you like talk through that stuff because frankly, like we're thinking through um, how we should shape Fluent Base. So I appreciate you walking me through all this, and hopefully we can like meet the needs of chains like Lazy Chain when it's ready.
Yeah, honestly, like that sounds super exciting because, well, like unfortunately, like I feel like by design, like there's a lot of fragmentation in the crypto space in general. Like if you decide to launch on Solana, like you're also probably not gonna have by default like liquidity from like EVMs. So it's like, yeah, it's sort of like a world of trade-offs, as you say, and it's super. I think it's also like super, yeah, super interesting for sure.
Yeah. So, well, cool, man. I mean, let's jump over to the meme contest quickly before we wrap, um,
Yes.
and go over our winners. So, congrats to our friend Davy Jones Crypto, Davy Crypto Jones, for this. Wait, hold on, go back to I'm not controlling the mouse here, so I go back to the first one.
And that meme is so funny. Like I saw it yesterday, and I was like, or on Monday, I don't remember, but man, like Davey, like he really makes the best memes.
Davey crushed this. What's in the? I wonder what's being blended. It's funny.
That's a great question for Davey, man. Maybe some tomato juice. I don't know, man. Davey,
It just looked
please tell us.
hardcore, man. That's really yeah. That he's really getting after it in that kitchen.
Yeah, it's like I think it's a sort of like, so I think it's a sort of protein shake because he
Oh,
just
must
went to
be.
the gym and now he's blending. But I could be wrong.
Yeah, maybe you should drink half of that. He's about to pop. Um, all right, that's awesome. Good stuff, Davey. Good. We can go to the next one. All right, Sea Girl 369. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, Paco, I don't know if you've seen some of our other memes of Dimitri, like our co-founder and CTO,
Yes.
but he's like an absolute character. He's the giga brain behind Blended Execution and absolute character, and our community has had a good time like memeing the hell out of him.
Yeah, that's a good one too. That's a good one too.
Nice, nice. All right,
Always
Seagirl, good stuff.
cooking, right? Always
Yeah,
blending.
man.
Sorry.
No, we cook too. Awesome. And then last one, oh boy, a bunch of sloths in there. Oh wow, all right, that's dope. Sylvie Corp, good work there. Interesting. I wonder. Any thoughts on that, Paco?
I think it's a little bit obscure, but I like it.
Yeah, definitely creative. All right, dope.
Silverberg
Well,
has pretty rare slots. I know him. He has a blue slot and also one with like long hair that is really cool.
yeah, if those slots were in there, it'd be different color smoothie. Um, all right, well, dope. Yeah, good stuff. Congrats to all our winners. Um, those were dope, and thank you for everybody for participating. Um, any final things you want to talk through, Paco? If not, maybe we can wrap with stage. I know you mentioned like testnet coming up soon. I don't know if there's any other shout outs you want to make for people who are either building on or engaging with DevNet, or where people should come be a part of the community, engage. Any kind of last words?
Yeah, honestly, like I would say big shout out to like our community members like Davey. Halo, Burak, and like I feel like, well, a lot of people in the community have like cooking like a lot of good stuff. Like also like Cool Crypto, like he hosts like really good spaces, like especially with us. So it's like I feel like really big shout out to like the community members, the ones I mentioned, and also like the ones that I haven't, because I feel like it's such a long list that it's really impossible to like mention everyone. Uh, also like big shout out to like all of the teams building on Lazy Chain. Like really, like they've been like super helpful. Yeah, like that's also like I would say really important, and all the developers. So yeah, big shout out to like also like, well, the Celestia team for supporting us, and well, to you, man, for having us here. If you wanna join the community, just hop on the Discord, and tomorrow we're also gonna host a space with Fluent, which is probably gonna be slightly different because I'm going to be the one asking Dino a bunch of questions. So and you guys like are also like our spaces, like they're pretty open, meaning anyone in the community can sort of like grab the mic and like start asking you questions. So yeah, excited for that actually. So yeah, but thank you for having us. I think our community really appreciates it.
Awesome, man. Yeah, thanks for going through that. It was a pleasure to have you. Thank you as well to all the all the slots in the community joining this, and you know what? I'll give a shout out to Celestia guys too. They're dope and have been so helpful to us as well.
and
And pump for tomorrow, man.
and by the way, is this is this going to be recorded?
It is. It is definitely recorded.
Okay, awesome.
All right, cool, man. Thank you. Thank you everyone for listening. Congrats to the meme contest winners, and see a bunch of you tomorrow.
I will, Dino.